Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the CEO Story. And boy, do we have a fantastic episode today. We have got Chad Gobel, who is the founder and the CEO of the Gobel Group, and they help philanthropic organizations connect with people and get more funds raised. So, Chad, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. How are you doing?
Good, Casey. Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem at all. Can you share just a little bit more detail about what the Gobel Group does, and then we can get into kind of your history and your background?
Yep. So we're a consulting firm. We focus on the healthcare industry. We work with hospitals and health systems around the world, and we help them build stronger philanthropic programs so that they can ultimately raise more money from their grateful patients, from their community, and corporations and foundations that they have connections to. So we've been in business for 10 years. We worked with about 800 hospitals across the world. And we actively work with 150, 200 at any particular time.
Wow, fantastic. Sounds like a really worthwhile cause that you've created there. But it wasn't always like that, was it? So let's kind of recap back to kind of the earlier days. And we'll kind of work our way forward from that. So if you kind of get into earlier on in your career where you were working as a special assistant, what was life like back then?
Yeah, well, when I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college, but my dad said, look, if you can read well and speak well, you can communicate effectively, that's really what you need. You'll figure everything out as you go along. And so I majored in English and political science, communication, and I got really involved in student government. I thought I was going to go into politics. And so my first job out of college was working for a member of Congress. And Casey, it's funny, like I still remember my first interview. I went down to Capitol Hill and I sat with the chief of staff, and he said, "Okay, Chad," he's like, you're gonna have the most important job in the office. You're gonna spend more time with the congressman than anybody else. And I thought, wow, how can this be? How can a 22-year-old get the most important job right out of college? And I said, well, what's my title gonna be? And he said, well, you'll be special assistant. And I thought, oh wow, special assistant, that sounds good. And then I said, well, what are you gonna? And I said, well, what's my job gonna be? He said, well, you'll pick the congressman up in the morning. You'll drive him to work. You'll run errands for him during the day. You can be with him in meetings and take notes. And then you'll, take him home at night. You might stop at a few fundraisers. And I said, well, wait, like I'm his driver? And he said, yeah. And I'm like, oh. He said, but no, you're missing the point. He said, you're going to spend more time with him than anybody else. You're going to get to see what it's like to be a member of Congress. You're going to see things and hear things that no one else is going to get to experience. And actually turned out to be an incredible job. I mean, it was a grind. It was 17 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. But I have to say, like, I learned a tremendous amount. And I think the most important thing it taught me is that I did not want to be a member of Congress.
A lot of people have this notion that it's a walk in the park and it's very easy, but when you get that close and you see it day to day, it's actually a lot of effort goes into that, right?
I mean, that job is, it has its, it obviously has its bright spots, and you're in a position where you can make a meaningful impact on people's lives. But I mean, it is a grind. It is a hard job, and you make a tremendous sacrifice with your family when you're in a role like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then let's fast forward on after the year or so with the congressman. Then what happened in your career from that point onwards?
Yeah, so after I left his office after 2 years, I went to work for the University of Maryland. I worked for the president, and I was his governmental affairs director. So I worked with local, state, and federal government with elected officials, and I helped push the university's interest, through those constituencies. And I did that job for 4 years. And my boss, Dr. Britt Kerwin, one of the smartest, nicest people I have ever experienced, been around, and he taught me so much. And that was such a great experience. But after 4 years, he left to become president of the Ohio State University. And so I just felt like, in a position like that where you're so close to the president, that the new president really needed their own person. So I transitioned from that job and I moved into a fundraising job where I still worked at the university, but I was responsible for raising money for the School of Public Affairs. So that was sort of my first entry into the world of philanthropy as a professional. And so that was my kind of transition.
It's often seen as a very hard role as well when you're constantly hitting up people to raise funds for different organizations and events. And how did you kind of go about doing that?
Well, honestly, I never looked at it as like hitting people up. I looked at it as, especially in healthcare, where you, you know, when I worked at the Cleveland Clinic for a while, and I remember the CEO, Dr. Cosgrove, he came to one of our meetings and he said, he's like, you're not a fundraiser. You're a part of a team that focuses every day on delivering exceptional experiences for patients and their families. And your role may be a little bit different than that of a heart surgeon, but you play an equally important role in delivering that client experience. And I always remember that. And so I feel like, my job as a philanthropy professional was to engage with people who had experienced the School of Public Affairs or as a patient at the Cleveland Clinic, and to give them an opportunity to express their gratitude and to do that through a charitable contribution. We all hopefully are grateful for our experiences, and we all express that gratitude in different ways. And one of the ways that you can express that gratitude is through philanthropy. So I looked at my job as just really an opportunity to help people express their gratitude through this way, and then to show them how that gift was going to have a significant positive impact on the organization. So, to me, it was never hard. It was just, there's some awkwardness in the beginning if you're connecting with people that haven't expressed that gratitude overtly. So there's some rejection that goes along in the initial part. But once you find someone that's grateful, then honestly, it's a joyful experience.
Yeah, and especially like you said, I think you framed it really well, where you've helped positively impact these people's lives, and now if they're in a position to be able to help someone else feel that same joy,
Yeah.
coming from a real place of gratitude and a warm feeling rather than feeling the need to be obligated towards contributing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's research that talks about the positive health benefits of philanthropy and giving back. How, when you give back, it creates your own sense of gratitude, and it sort of infuses inside of you a sense of happiness and well-being, and that translates to just an overall healthier perspective and lifestyle. So, there's lots of reasons why giving back and gratitude should be a part of everybody's life.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. A lot of what I do kind of in my morning routine is have a journal literally right next to my bed, start the day off with gratitude and end every day with gratitude. And it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be anything huge, or it could be the smallest thing that you're grateful for, watching the sunrise or the sunset, or kind of, you know, living a fulfilled life. And, people often get caught up on being undergrateful for everything that we have. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a big part of it. So now let's fast forward into kind of you starting your own business. From this point, you were working with other organizations, but now you've had the Gobel Group for what, over 10 years now, which is a fantastic achievement in itself. How did you come about starting it and then growing and scaling it?
Yeah. Well, I think this is one of the, gosh, how do you say it? This is one of the things that, people don't realize, like they might look at my situation and think, that I've done well, but they don't realize that up until this point, there were a lot of things that happened that I wouldn't necessarily be proud of. Like, so for example, when I was still, so when I worked at the Cleveland Clinic, I had the most amazing job. And I was young. I mean, I was probably 30, I don't know, 35 or something. And, I was in a very senior role. I was making really good money and doing well, traveling across the world, interacting with billionaires who had been patients of the clinic. I just had a great job. But my ego told me that I should be the number one. Like I was like, Chad, you know, like you're special. You should be number one somewhere. And so I got a call one day and they invited me to interview for the vice presidency at another institution. And and so I went, I interviewed, and you know, they ultimately offered me the job. It was, you know, twice the salary, you know, three times the number of staff. It was just, you know, it was a big time program. And so I didn't really do my full due diligence. I was sort of romanced by the money and the title and the opportunity, and I took that job. And honestly, that was the worst job in my life. And I suffered for 3 years. And and I had two bosses, and they didn't like each other. And so I was constantly in the middle of their own battle. And I still remember it was the day after Christmas, and one of my bosses called me up and said, "Hey, we need to meet." And I'm like, "It's the day after Christmas." He's like, "I know, we need to meet." So I met him, and he said, "Chad, you know, you've done a great job. We're raising more money than we did before, but I just don't feel like you're a part of my team. I don't feel like, you know, that you're really loyal to me. And so, you know, today's your last day." And you know, and I said, "Okay, well, you know, if that's your decision, that's your decision. It's probably a good thing that I have a severance and you're going to pay me for the next year, but you know, that's the way these things work out." And so I honestly, Casey, I was happy to have left that opportunity, but it was that opportunity that then motivated me to say, okay, what do I want? Do I want to go work somewhere else and trade one set of problems for another, or do I want to take control of my life and my destiny? And that's what motivated me to start a company. Like I felt like I could do something, I could do it as well as better than other people. I had the Fortunately, I had the financial security that I knew, like, that I had a, you know, a number of months to give it a chance. And so I just went all in. And I remember that day when I went back to my home, I called my friend and I told him what was going on. And he said, "All right, Chad," he's like, "on Monday, I want you to meet me at this address." And I'm like, "Danny, what's the address?" He's like, "Nope, just meet me at this address." So Monday morning, you know, I just been fired. Monday morning, I show up at this office. It's this high-rise office building. I walk in, and he's there with another guy. I walk in. He walks up to me, he puts his arm around me, and he said, "Chad, I want you to meet Alan." I'm like, "Hi, Alan." He's like, "Alan's the building manager." I'm like, "Okay, Alan, nice to meet you." He was like, "You need an office." I'm like, "Danny, what are you talking about?" He's like, "You're going to start your company. You need an office." I'm like, feeling embarrassed because I don't have any money to pay for an office. I don't have any employees. I don't have anything. But he's like, "Chad, I just know you're going to be successful and you need an office. You need to get up every day. You need to go to your office." I'm like, "Okay." So we walk around the building. He shows me this one office. He's like, "This is perfect for you." It was, Casey, it was like 1,500 square feet. It was like 6 offices. I walk in the office. I'm like, "Danny, it's beautiful. It's like overlooking the canal." I'm like, "But Danny, it's just me." He's like, "Don't worry, Chad. You're going to grow into it." And then I feel embarrassed. I'm like, "Danny, I can't pay you." He was like, "I didn't ask you to pay me." I'm like, "Danny, I don't have any furniture." "Alan, don't we have a floor with, you know, furniture that other people have left?" So we go up, and basically that day I left with a beautiful office, completely furnished, and not having to pay anything. So this is a long way of saying that things happen in your life and you may feel at that moment that it's the worst thing that happened to you. And in reality, it turns out to be the best thing that happens to you. And so for me, worst thing that happened was I got fired. The best thing that happened is I called my friend. He believed in me. He kind of gave me a chance, and I had a chance to move into an office that was great. And, you know, Monday morning, I'm now in my office and things are great. And I said, "Danny, one day I'm going to pay you back." He's like, "Don't worry, I know you will." And Casey, it was like 3 months later that I had picked up like my 10th client. I was making as much money as I had in my last job. And I called Danny up and I said, "Okay, what's the rent?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'm ready to start paying my rent." So, you know, I think I had an office with him for 4 or 5 years, never once had a contract, a lease agreement, nothing. And I'm so lucky that I feel like the success that we enjoy today, in large part, it's because of those people at the very beginning that believed in you and helped you when you couldn't do anything for them, but they just wanted to help you. And so it's like, it's that gratitude that I have for them that got me started, and what we've done since then.
And you know, that's a beautiful story. It resonates so much with me because I had so many similar things in my career in terms of critical people in order to
Hmm.
one, move from England to America, get a work permit,
Yeah.
get a green card. Like these are all one in multiple million chances of this even happening, right? So
Yeah.
I can definitely think back to some of those times and stories. And I had a similar thing to the one that you mentioned where you got let go. And I'd switched out of corporate America and started my own company. I'd gotten a client or two, but then a big client comes in and then it didn't work out with that client. And I was like heartbroken. And it was the best thing that ever happened because that client wasn't really a good fit for me. And they weren't really ready to pay for our services, or they didn't really have their ducks in a row. They weren't ready. But at the time, it was so painful going through that. I'm like, I've left this big corporate job, taking this risk, backed myself, and
Yeah.
just right at the offset, it was going really well, and then boom. But it turns out to be really good because you learn and you grow and you attract that good, the good like karma, let's call it, if we have to put a word on it, and it comes back around, right?
Yeah. And I feel like, and I don't know if you find this with other entrepreneurs that you've interacted with, but I just feel like, I don't always know how things are going to work out, but I know they're going to work out. And I just, even when things are really rough, and there have been lots of moments over the last 10 years that are really rough, I don't know. I just have this blind faith that I'm going to figure it out. And it may not be clean and pretty, but I'm going to find a way to work through whatever it is that comes. And in the end, we're going to be fine. Like, we're going to continue to move forward. And we celebrated our 10-year anniversary this year on January 11th, and on that day, I actually reached out to Danny, the guy that got me the first office, and I just said, on this day 10 years ago, I walked into your building and you gave me a chance and you set me up with the office, and I haven't talked to him in probably a year or two, and I just said, I just want you to know, like, on this day, I'm thinking of you, and I'm so grateful, right, that you helped me get to where I'm at today. And I think, like with your story, I just feel like when you're in this entrepreneurial role and you're getting started, you gotta, like, you can't be afraid to ask people for help. You're gonna need help. And uh and and generally, people want to help you. Like, people want other people. I feel like, the good people, they want you to be successful and they want to help you. And you got to be willing to ask for that.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very common trend that I speak with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, um, and every one of them is very optimistic. The glass is always
Yeah.
half full. We can figure it out. We just have to have the drive and the will to move forward, even if that's a small incremental step every single day. And you'll get that success. And people often paralyze themselves with focusing on the how. And
Hmm.
Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. It's like there's three main sections: is the what, the where, and the how. And
Hmm.
people focus so much on that how that it paralyzes them from taking any type of action
Hmm.
whatsoever.
Hmm.
And you could have been paralyzed and stayed at home and not went to that meeting on Monday and never even known that you could have had a free office for a few months and grown into a multi-million dollar company now.
Yeah.
But you were ready to take action, have a leap of faith, trust in your friend, and look where the starting steps of what came after that. So I think the key to everything in life is all about taking action, because whether you're failing faster or whether you're getting one step closer, it's all down to your interpretation of it. The only way you really lose is if you stop and if you give
Yeah.
up, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's like what you said in the beginning when you talked about, people look at the glass half empty or full. And and it's also how you look at life, right? So you can look at life and you can take any experience and you can either be grateful for the experience or you can be, paralyzed by the experience. I think, isn't it Tony Robbins that says, like, you can look at life and say, this is what this person did to me, or you can look at life and say, this is what this person did for me, right? So
Absolutely.
you basically, like, that's the same thing in business. You can look at a situation and you could say, all right, I'm going to be paralyzed by this, or you know what, I'm going to just dig in and figure it out, and I don't know what tomorrow is going to be, but tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to figure it out. It's like, too, I was listening to something that Oprah Winfrey said, and it was something like, dealing with crisis, and she said, like, basically all you can do is make the best decision with what the information you have at that moment. You can't make the next 5 decisions. You can just make the next best decision with what you know at that moment. And I feel like in business, when you get into a bad situation, instead of like focusing on how bad things could be in the future, just make the next best decision with what you have, and then from there you go from there, and you'll find your way through it.
Yeah, and it's incremental, right? If you chunk down the size of the problem into smaller steps, you can manage those small bite-sized steps. But if you look at the whole problem as a huge thing that you can't get over, like, I think a good analogy is Everest, right? You don't climb Everest by looking, oh my goodness, it's Everest. You do it by putting one foot in front of the other over and over again. And I think
Yeah.
I really like that analogy because it's a big one, right? And it's
Yeah.
all about action and, like you said, steps. So, Chad, I like to end with this one question that I ask everyone. And that is, if you had to put your success down to 3 factors and apportion between them, how would you apportion that between drive, skill, and luck?
Hmm. Well, I don't really believe in luck. Um, I believe, you create your opportunities. So if it's really between drive and skill, uh, I'd probably put 60% drive, 40% skill. I think skill is important, but a lot of times, it's about showing up and being prepared. We have, we're managing 200 client engagements right now, and we have about 30 people in the company. And I tell our consultants all the time that, there's 2 things that you've got to focus on in your work. One is the work. You've got to deliver a good product and a good service to the client so that they see that and they benefit from their work with us. But you also have to nurture the relationship. And at the end of our contract, there could be 4 things that could happen. They could have had a bad experience, the product could have not worked, and they didn't appreciate working with you. In that case, there's not going to be a renewal of the contract. The product could work, and they could have not enjoyed working with you, and they're not going to work with us. The product could not have worked, but if they enjoyed working with you and they believe in you, then they will renew. Or if the product worked and they enjoyed working with you, then they're going to renew and they're going to be a Raven fan and they're going to refer us. So relationship along with skill, both are important, but sometimes the relationship or the drive is actually even more important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's fantastic. So, Chad, if people want to get in touch with you or reach out to the group, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, our website is gobelgroup.com, Gobel group.com. So you can get us through our website, and my email is chat@gobelgroup.com.
And we'll put the links to those below so people can reach out to you more efficiently. Chad, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been absolutely epic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Casey. All right, thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.